Hi, my name is Maureen and I work for the Coachella Valley Water District. And I'm here today to share a story with you called Tommy and the Canal. And it's about the adventure of a little boy one day. Before I begin my story about Tommy, I'd like to share with you some pictures about what the canal looks like and what it looks like with no water in it. So, this is a picture of our canal. And you can see here that this has water in it. It looks like a river, but it's not a river. It's a man-made way of getting water here from a very long ways away. There's concrete on the sides and the bottom. Now, concrete's really hard. Can you dig your fingers or your toes into concrete? And there's one more thing about the canal is, can you all see this brown line? That brown line is mud. And that mud comes from the water. There's dirt in the water and it sticks to the concrete. And it becomes very slippery over time. And we have a fence here, and that fence is to keep people out, to keep people safe, because the canal is a dangerous place. And this is a farmer's field, so he's getting water from the canal to water his crops. And this water comes from very long ways away. The Colorado River. Can you all say that? Colorado River. Some of you may have been there, but it's over 100 miles away. And right here is a sign that we put on the canal to make sure that people know that they shouldn't be going in there. Now, this is a picture of the canal when they were building it a very long time ago. And as you can see, the canal is shaped kind of like a letter of the alphabet. What letter of the alphabet is that? It's shaped like a V. Can you all make that shape with your hands? All right, very good. So we see the canal as it was being built, and then they came in and they put cement on the sides and the bottom, and then they filled it up with water. And that water is about 12 feet deep. So if I stood on my own head, my second head way up there would be about how deep the water is in the canal. So it's very deep, deeper than most swimming pools. And this shows some of the kinds of things that our farmers grow with this wonderful water that we have coming into the Coachella Valley. So I'm going to point to the pictures, and maybe you can share with me what these are pictures of. So what is that? What are those? Grapes. What is this? Celery. And what are these? Oh, look at all the pretty colors. These are bell peppers. What about these? Give up? It's a little hard to tell what they are, but these are mangoes. Really good. Oh, and what is this? This is something that you might make a nice big salad with. This is lettuce. And what are these? Oh, wow. Strawberries. How many of you like strawberries? I do too. And what are these? These are dates, and they grow on a date palm, and this is what they look like when they're about ready to be harvested. And what is this? Watermelon. Yum. And this? That's cauliflower. And what are these? That's corn, ears of corn, just ready for us to eat. And all of these, this is an orange, a lime, and a lemon, all part of the family of fruits called the citrus family. And they're all loaded with vitamin C, which is really healthy for us. And what are these? Carrots. How many of you like carrots? Oh, I love them too. This here is what? Broccoli. Oh, yum. What are these? Tomatoes. Yes. And I saved the hardest one for last. But can you tell me what those are? That is an artichoke. And an artichoke is part of the thistle family, and if it This is the flower of the plant, and if it's left on the plant long enough, if we don't cut it, it blooms into this huge purple flower that's very beautiful. Well, all right, so now you have an idea of some of the kinds of things that our farmers grow with all of this wonderful water that's brought here for them to use for growing their plants. So are you all ready for your story now? Well, as I said earlier, the story is called Tommy and the Canal, and this is a true story. It happened a very long time ago. And in one of the pictures that I showed you earlier, I said there was a fence, and on that fence there was a sign. And that sign looks like this. And there are some very big words on this sign. It says, trespass and loitering forbidden by law. Now those are really big words. Does anyone know what these words mean? When I was your age, I wouldn't have known what they mean. So to trespass means to go somewhere where you don't belong. And if you're loitering, means you're hanging around in some place where you shouldn't be. So this sign is really telling you not to come inside the fence and not to hang out there, because it's forbidden by law, and to be forbidden means that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. Here's Tommy. And as I said, it's based on a true story. And Tommy lived in the city of Indio. And back then, there were very few people living in the city of Indio. And Tommy's house was at the end of a very long street, which meant there weren't any friends for Tommy to play with that were close, because there was no one else that lived on his street. And Tommy didn't have any brothers or sisters, so he didn't even have playmates at home. So Tommy usually played by himself. And back behind where Tommy lived, because there were so few people, behind his house, not too far away, was the canal that I showed you a picture of earlier. So one day Tommy's decided that he wants to go outside and play for a little while. So he goes up to his mom and he says, "Mom?" She says, "Yes, Tommy." He says, "May I go outside and play in the desert behind the house?" And she thinks for a minute. She says, "Well, yes, Tommy, you may do that, but I want you to remember a couple of things. First, I want you to go put on some long pants, because I don't want you to get scraped on anything that's out in the desert. And second, Tommy, I want you to put some shoes on so that you will not step on anything that could hurt your feet." He says, "Okay, Mom." She says, "One last thing, Tommy. Promise me that you'll stay away from the canal that runs behind our house. The water is very deep and it can be very dangerous." And he says, "Okay, Mom, I promise." And with that, Tommy runs off to his room to get changed. And while Tommy's changing, let's take a look at where he's going to be playing. So this is what it looks like behind Tommy's house. Across the canal, which we see right here with its water in it and the cement, is a farmer's field planted in nice, neat rows. And this is the cement, and this is the water that runs in the canal that is feeding these plants. We also have a road that runs along the canal, and that road is not there for us to drive on to have your parents take you to school or anything, but it's used by our workers so they can get anywhere on the canal when they need to. And look at that sign. There's that sign again, just like the one I showed you. It says trespass and loitering forbidden by law. So that means basically to stay out and be safe. And what else is in this picture? There's a lot of this out in the desert. What might that be? It's sand. And sometimes the wind blows out here and it will blow that sand up into these big mounds, and we call those sand dunes. And then there's all kinds of beautiful, ouch, plants. What just happened? I poked my finger on a cactus spine. Boy, that hurts. Well, now that you know where Tommy's going to be playing, let's see if he's ready. Well, Tommy's all changed and he's getting ready to head outside. And as he's running out the back door of his house, he says, "Bye, Mom. I'll see you later." She says, "Don't stay out too late, Tommy, but have a fun time." And with that, Tommy runs outside and he runs to the top of the very first sand dune that he can find. And Tommy looks all around. And he hears something. And he looks toward the sound and he says, "There's something going on near the end of my street, but I can't tell exactly what. I'm going to go for a better look," says Tommy. So he hikes down to the bottom of that sand dune and up to the top of an even taller sand dune. And he looks again. Tommy says, "Oh, wow, There are lots of trucks down there, and I can hear that things are going on. I can hear that someone is pounding some nails, and I can see that someone is sawing some wood. Tommy says, I think they're building a house. Yes. Tommy says, wow, that house looks like a really big house. I think I'm going to count the rooms in that house, says Tommy. And if you'd like to count with me as Tommy counts those rooms, please feel free. So Tommy starts counting and he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wow, that's a big house. And if it's a big house, that means there may be a lot of people in that house, which means there might even be some children. And Tommy says, wow, I might have some new friends. Exactly. So Tommy's all excited. He takes a little jump and he says, oh my, that is so much fun. And with that little jump, Tommy scoots down to the bottom of that sand dune. And he gets down there and he's digging in the sand and he's having a great time playing in the sand. And Tommy says, that was fun. I'm going to do that again. So he hikes back up to the sand dune and he says, this time I'm going to count and I'm going to clap. And on the count of 3, I'm going to jump up and scoot all the way to the bottom of that sand dune. Would you like to count and clap with Tommy? Okay, are you ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3, and Tommy jumps and he scoots all the way down to the bottom of that sand dune. And he's down there digging tunnels in the sand, getting sand all over him, having a great time. And while Tommy is playing, something happens to the water on the canal. It begins to go down, down, down. Now Tommy doesn't see that the water in the canal has gone down. But we have people whose job it is to always make sure that there's plenty of water in the canal for all of our farmers. And this man's name is Keith. And Keith worked at the water district for a very long time. And Keith comes driving down the canal road and he looks in the canal and he says, oh my gosh, there's almost no water in the canal. It's my job to make sure that there's always plenty of water in the canal. Now we have these things on the canal called gates. They go up and down. And when the gate is up, water can move past it and fill the next area of the canal. But when the gate is down, no water can get past. And then the next section of canal will go empty. So let's take a look at what that gate looks like. This is one of the gates. Now it doesn't look like what you may think of as a gate because this here is the gate. It's like a big steel door and it goes up and down. So when Keith gets there, he sees that the gate is down. Well, that means no water is getting past. So he has to raise the gate. And back then, we had no way to open the gate except with a big wheel. So Keith goes over to this big wheel and he takes that big wheel and he starts pulling on that wheel and pulling on that wheel. Very, very slowly, that gate begins to rise and the water comes gushing out from underneath that gate. Now, does this water look like it would be easy to swim in? No. Look at how wild that water is, and it's white, and it's churning. So it would be very dangerous right there. So Keith knows what he has to do. He has to drive back up the canal road to open a gate. The gate must be closed. So he gets in his truck, and he drives back up the canal road. So while Keith is gone, Tommy comes out from behind that sand dune. He brushes himself off, gets all of the sand off, and he says, wow, I've been out here a very long time. It's time for me to head home. So Tommy starts to run home. He says, because I want to tell Mom all about that new house that they're building at the end of the street. So Tommy starts to run. Ouch, says Tommy. What happened? Did Tommy forget something when he left the house? He forgot his shoes. Now, if Tommy had had his shoes on, would he have stepped on that cactus spine and gotten hurt? Probably not. So Tommy looks down at his foot and he sees that his foot is bleeding, and he goes down and he touches it. He says, ouch, that hurts. I should have put my shoes on, he says. But he says, I need to get home because I really want to tell Mom all about that nice house. So he starts to walk home, and as he's walking, he's going, ouch, ouch, that really hurts. I wish I had put my shoes on. But as Tommy's walking, he turns and he looks and he sees the canal. There's just a little bit of water in the canal. I bet that water is really cold, and I bet that water would feel so good on my foot. I think I am going to go up to the canal and put my foot in that nice cold water. Now Tommy remembered what he had told his mom, but he told her he would stay away from the deep water in the canal. And since there was just a little bit of water, Tommy thought, certainly it can't be dangerous. So let's see where Tommy's going next. And Tommy gets to the very edge of the canal, and he looks down and he says, oh my, that's a lot deeper than I thought. But my foot is so sore, I think I'm going to put my foot in the canal. So Tommy steps over the edge, and he's going very fast because the sides are very steep. And what do you think happens when Tommy's feet hit that mud? It's slippery, and he slides right down into the water. And Tommy's standing there, and he says, oh, that feels so good. That before long, Tommy forgot all about having a sore foot, and he began to run and splash and play in the canal. Oh my goodness, I'm so tired. Now I really have to go home. So Tommy turns to get out of the canal, and he goes 1, 2, 3, then he slides right back down into the canal. So he says, well, I'll just try another place. So he hikes a little further down to the canal, tries again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and down he goes again. Oh my, that's kind of slippery. In fact, it's very slippery. Well, I know I can get out where I got in, says Tommy. So he goes down to where he got in the canal, and he tries again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and down he goes. Now, Tommy realizes something. He is stuck. So he calls out and says, help me, I'm stuck in the canal and I can't get out. Does anyone hear Tommy? No, Tommy's out in the wide open desert. And he says, well, I'll just keep trying. Well, if you remember, Keith went down the canal road, or back up the canal road, and opened the gate. So what's happening now to the water on the canal? The water is headed right for Tommy. And pretty soon that water is up to Tommy's waist. Does that water go any higher? Tommy says, well, I need a plan. So Tommy's thinking, and then that water goes up to Tommy's neck, and he says, now I really need a plan. Well, I can swim, so if that water goes over my head, I'm going to push off the bottom with all my might, and I'm going to swim to the side, and I'm going to climb right on out. Do you think that water goes any higher? Yes, it does, and it goes right up over Tommy's head. But he was smart. He had a plan, and he pushed off the bottom, and he swam to the side, and then he tried to get out. But his feet and his hands kept slipping on that slippery mud. And something that Tommy had really never thought about was the fact that there is a current in the canal, and it began to carry Tommy down the canal. Now Tommy is keeping his head above water, but just barely, because he's paddling his feet and he's treading water with his arms, which takes an awful lot of energy, and Tommy is getting very, very tired. And Tommy continues a little further down the canal, and he's calling for help. Help me, I'm stuck in the canal and I can't get out. But nobody hears Tommy. Well, now Keith was a very good employee, and he would always double check his work. So he drove back down the canal road and was checking the canal. And as he drives down, he sees that the water is back in the canal, But what else does he see? He sees Tommy in the canal, and he says, "Oh my gosh, there's a little boy in the canal. I have got to do something." So Keith jumps out of his truck, and he rushes over to where Tommy is. And he shouts down at Tommy, "I'm going to save you." And Tommy is trying so hard to keep his head above water, but he's getting very tired. So Keith rushes, and he gets a rope from the back of his truck. And he takes that rope, and he ties that rope around his waist. And he makes sure it's nice and tight. And then he ties the other end around the bumper of his truck. And right about then, he's been keeping an eye on Tommy. But Tommy says, "Oh, I can't do this anymore." And Tommy gives up. And what do you think happens when he stops paddling his feet and moving his arms? He goes down, down, down. Well, Keith jumps right on in after him, and Keith opens his eyes to look for Tommy, but he can't see anything because there's so much mud in the water that he begins to feel for Tommy. And then he feels a foot, and he gets Tommy, and he brings Tommy close. And then he takes that rope, and he pulls on that rope, and he pulls on that rope, and he pulls till he gets the both of them to the side of the canal. And then he takes Tommy, and he pushes Tommy up and out of the canal. And he pulls himself out, and he kneels next to Tommy. And he shakes him. He says, little boy, are you okay?" Nothing. He hears nothing. And he sees that Tommy is not breathing. He says, "Oh my gosh, I need to breathe for him." And he gives him 3 rescue breaths. And he goes, and he shakes him again. Little boy, are you okay?" Still nothing. So he says, "I need to keep breathing for him." So he's going to give him 3 more rescue breaths. "Would you like to help breathe for Tommy?" "Okay, let's go. Let's give him 3 more breaths." And he shakes him one last time. Little boy, are you okay?" And he waits for a moment. Tommy still isn't breathing. And then all of a sudden, Tommy coughs. And he spits up all of this water. And Tommy looks up at Keith and says, "Oh, I don't feel good. I just want to go home." And Keith says, "You were in the canal and you nearly drowned." And all Tommy can say is, "I just want to go home." So Keith says, "Okay, I'll take you home." So Keith gets Tommy, puts him in the truck, and off they go to Tommy's house. Now, Tommy's mom has been at home that day. She was doing some housework, and she's looking out the window, expecting to see Tommy coming home. But she doesn't see anything. And she keeps looking every few minutes, and then she doesn't see anything. Then she looks one more time, and what she sees is a big truck, a water district truck, pull up right in front of their house, and she sees Keith and Tommy get out of the truck and come walking down the walk. She rushes to the door, opens the door, and takes one look at them and says, "Oh my gosh, you're both soaking wet. What has happened?" And Keith says, "Ma'am, your son was in the canal today, and he nearly drowned. If I hadn't been there to get him out of the canal, he probably would have drowned." She says, "Oh, thank you so much for rescuing my dear Tommy. I've been wondering where he was because he's way too late coming home." Keith says, "One more thing. Tommy says he doesn't really feel very good, and he may have swallowed some of the canal water, and that's what's making him not feel good. So you might want to call the doctor and ask the doctor what you should do." She says, "Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that you were there and that you brought my little boy home." And with that, Keith says goodbye, and he heads back to work. Tommy's mom calls the doctor and says, "Doctor, my son was in the canal today, and he swallowed some of that canal water. Now he says he's not feeling good. What should I do?" And the doctor says, "Well, put Tommy to bed, keep him warm, and call me in a couple of days if he's not feeling better." And she says, "Thank you, doctor, I will do that." She hangs up the phone, and she puts Tommy to bed. And Tommy rests in bed, and she comes in that evening and offers Tommy dinner. He says, "Oh, Mom, I don't want any dinner, but thanks." And then Tommy goes to sleep. And he wakes up the next morning, and his mom comes in and offers him breakfast. He says, "Mom, I'm not really hungry." So he continues to rest. She offers him lunch, and he doesn't want any lunch. And then he has no dinner again. So Tommy's mom is beginning to get worried. On the morning of the second day, she goes in, and Tommy still doesn't want any breakfast. He has no lunch, and he has no dinner, which is quite unusual for Tommy. On the morning of the third day, she's just about ready to call the doctor when Tommy climbs out of bed, goes up to his mom and says, "Mom?" She says, "Yes, Tommy." He says, "I'm hungry. Will you make me something to eat, please?" And she says, "Oh, Tommy, I'm so thankful that you're finally hungry. I've been so worried about you. I'm going to make you the best breakfast, and after we have breakfast, I think we should go down to the water district and thank that nice man for rescuing." He said, "I would really like to do that, Mom, because I never said thank you, and he saved me." She says, "Well, you'll get a chance to thank him a little later." So they had a wonderful breakfast, they get dressed, and they head down to the water district. Now at the water district, lots of people, lots of different jobs there are at the water district. And there's one person here, and his name is Joe. And Joe was a draftsman. Now back then, maps were drawn by hand, and signs were done by hand, and this was one of Joe's jobs. In fact, one of Joe's very first jobs when he was at the water district was to make a sign, and it was this sign that he created that says, "The trespass and loitering forbidden by law." Well, on this day, Keith happened to be in the office, and Keith came in to chat for a minute with his friend Joe. And he says, "Hey, Joe, how's it going?" Joe says, "Man, it's going great, Keith. I've got lots of good projects to work on. How's it going with you, Keith?" And he says, "Well, there was a little boy in the canal earlier this week, and I had to rescue him. And he wasn't feeling very good, but I sure hope he's okay. I haven't heard anything." And right about then, Tommy and his mom come walking into the water district. And as soon as Tommy saw Keith, he rushed over to him and says, thank you so much for rescuing me. I don't know what I was going to do. I was so scared, and then you came and rescued me." And Keith looks down at Tommy and says, "What were you doing in the canal anyway, Tommy? There was a sign right near where you were that says trespass and loitering forbidden by law, Tommy. Why did you disobey the sign and go in?" Tommy looks up at Keith and says, "Well, that's a very nice sign, but those are really big words, and I don't know what they mean." Keith looks at Joe. Joe looks at Keith and says, "Oh my gosh, if Tommy doesn't understand the sign, then perhaps no little boy or girl understands the sign. Perhaps we need a new sign." And Tommy heard that and he says, "A new sign? A new sign? Are you going to make a new sign? I have an idea for a new sign. Can I share that idea with you?" Tommy was very excited. And they said, "Sure, Tommy." So they gave him some paper, and he sat down, and he started drawing. And he was drawing, and he came over and he showed his drawing to Joe. And Joe looks at it and says, "Wow, Tommy, I really like this sign. There's just one thing I'd like to add. Can I put you in the sign, Tommy?" And Tommy says, "You want me in your sign? Wow, that's great, because then I can tell all the little boys and girls to stay out of the canal." Would you like to see the sign that Tommy helped design? All right. It looks like this. Now, we all know what the big red circle with the slash going through it means, right? That means don't do what the pictures are doing. And there are some simple words on this sign too. And they say, stay out. Can you read that with me? Stay out. And then there's a couple of words here at the bottom, and it says, no nades. Now these words are Spanish words. Does anyone know what those words mean in English? Well, no nades in Spanish means no swimming in English, or don't swim. So we're telling you in English to stay out. We're telling you in Spanish not to go swimming. And then we have this sign. And in this sign, it shows Tommy when he was standing in the canal when the water was only a few inches deep, Was it safe for Tommy to be in the canal then? No, because Tommy didn't know when the water would come back or if it would. But it did. Was it safe when Tommy was trying to swim in the canal? No, because Tommy couldn't get out of the canal even though he could swim to the side. So there was no way for Tommy to get out. So our canal is not a safe place to play around or to swim in. And there's a couple other water safety things I'd like to share with you today. Think about this. If you were down at the river and you were playing and someone offered you a boat ride, would you jump in the boat and go for a ride with them? Would you go if they didn't offer you a life jacket? No, we should never go on a boat if we don't have a life jacket, because if that boat were driving down or up the river and they turned around really fast and you were on the side and you flipped out, all they would be able to see is your little head sticking above the water. Now, if you had a life jacket on, that would pop you up out of the water and allow you to use your arms to wave for help. So you should always wear a life jacket, okay? Now, with that said, should you ever swim alone? In a pool or in a lake or in a river? No, you should always have an adult watching you so that if something does happen, that they can call for help. One last thing I'd like to ask you to do for me today. I'd like you all, if you will, raise your right hand for me, please. So if I turn around, it's the hand on this side. And keep your hand up and say, I promise never to go in and swim or play near the canal. Now that's the promise, and you've just made, put your hands down. You just made a promise to me, and I think promises are special things, and they should never be broken if they don't have to be. So I hope you keep that promise to me for the rest of your life, because then I can come back and visit you again next year. All right. Well, thank you for listening to my story today. It was a pleasure having you. Be well and be safe.